Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Check. Are you there, David?
Check. I'm here. How are you tonight?
Wow, I'm good, man. I think the sound of this particular podcast is going to be spectacular.
People are not going to know what hit them.
Yeah, exactly. Only problem is because the Wednesday night Patreon chat group for the AML Nation, we have to talk really fast. I think I like the shorter podcasts because it keeps me on topic a little bit better. And they're I've never not liked doing the podcast ever. I've really never not liked doing the podcast in 10 years. But I never really had short ones or shorter ones. I think pretty early on I was up to an hour and a half. And, around 50 minutes, I'm editing it in like half the time. And I'm like, well, this is like way easier. And
yeah, and
go ahead.
No, I was going to say that, there are other podcasts, unfortunately. It's not just us, but, I think that hour 15 is sort of the push in it kind of, but once you get past that, it kind of,
I think so.
on a bit too much. Yeah.
And I think it worked for years, but I think it's a new word. I think, what the probably the difference was too. When I started, there wasn't any other podcasts for years, for like 5 or 6 or 7 years. So it was like nobody had really anything else to listen to when it came to model railroading. There was a couple other good ones out there, but they were sporadic. And so, but then now as time has changed and there's lots of other podcasts to listen to, people only want like 45 or 50 minutes so they can move on to the next one.
Yeah, people have a finite amount of time during the day to devote to listening to stuff, there's, myself, I have time on Mondays during work where I can listen to the Monday show and then I can listen to the Tuesday show on Wednesday, but people only have a certain amount of time with everything else going on in life with kids and family and work and you name it.
Well, and life is constantly changing. Like that's a big part of it. It's just constantly changing. And if you can't adapt to it, you're, it's just constantly changing in today's world. Things that you might have said 10 years ago now will jump up and bite you in the butt, or people don't have as much time to listen to your hour and a half podcast. So you need to be willing to kind of pay attention. And me being an old guy, it takes a little longer to sink in,
I would say you're not old, you're just vintage.
Yeah, well, we were out driving around somewhere, and I said to my wife, I said, look at that stupid old fool. And she's like, that guy's like 7 years younger than you. Like, are you kidding me? But I think I'll always be an 18-year-old. I don't move quite as fast, but.
Yeah. Well, the hobby keeps you young too,
You know what? I actually think that's a thing. I actually do believe that having a hobby like this does increase it. I think it overall increases the enjoyment of life. And I think if there were studies done, I think they would find that a hobby like this, basically those people live longer. Yeah. By a fair number, like 4 or 5, 6 years, something like that. Like because it's kind of like I've played golf all my life, and my pro used to always say, "We watch those old guys because they might not hit it as far, but they can putt. Everybody can putt until they're 110." And there's parts of this, all of this hobby, pretty much. Building big bench work might be a little slower, or getting under the layout to work on a switch machine is harder. But the actual sitting at a workbench and building models is just as easy as it was 60 years ago.
Right. And it's something that it's a learned skill, and it sort of, you build in having to have patience, whether it's something drying, that you paint it, or it's following an order of operation. If it's a structure kit or something, it just builds in patience that if you don't, if you do rush through it, then you get the results that just don't look like how you had it in your head.
Yeah, exactly. I
So
got I got all kinds of. So the best part about this particular podcast is that we've never really ever hardly talked but three words to each other.
yeah,
And
pretty much.
yeah, and so I love those kind of podcasts where it's people that you don't even know, and then you can just like start from scratch because there's so much to learn about the individual. Like you sent
Yeah.
me three different. You've got Lake Avenue Model Works,
Hmm.
which appears to be primarily is it primarily building plastic planes like IPM plastic model planes?
Yeah, so Lake Avenue Model Works started for me as just a Facebook group page for me to share what I'm doing and just not clutter up my normal Facebook page, my personal page. Um, I invited a lot of friends and family so they can kind of see what I'm doing. Um, it the name and everything comes from that I live on Lake Avenue in my town. And when we bought this house going on 4 years, um, originally the space that I wanted to have for a train layout and do the train hobby just didn't really progress how I wanted it to. So that took a back seat. And I've always built plastic models for forever. It's always been a side hobby. And with this space, that nice little workshop area that was sort of a bonus room of the house that I took over. It's like 9 foot by 9 foot. And so Lake Avenue Model Works has just turned into a place for me to build my models. And uh, on that page, I've also done some of my N scale stuff. I've done a little bit of HO scale stuff here and there. But yeah, primarily the past 3 years, 4 years, it's just been mostly plastic model airplanes and enjoying that hobby.
So yeah, so if anybody wants to see David's work on plastic, what's the proper way to say? What's the proper way to talk about model planes?
I Yeah, I call it. I've always I've whenever I've been telling, just whether it's a coworker or just a friend that's not in the hobbies, I just call it, scale scale modeling. I just kind of group it all under scale modeling because whether it's, HO scale, whether it's N scale, whether it's any of the plastic scales, it's all scale modeling to me. So,
Are you like pretty much all of us? You've been doing some sort of scale modeling since as long as you can remember.
oh yeah, for sure, yeah. Um, my dad got me involved with model trains since I was born. Um, I can remember I can remember being like 4 years old and he would give me these hand-me-downs of just blue shells, you know, boxcars, locomotives, just for me to play with on the floor. So I would push them around and end up breaking, step wells on, GP35 or something, and I would just push them around on the floor. And by the time I was, I think, my eighth birthday, that's when I got the quintessential at my time being in the '90s, it was a Bachmann train set, and did the instead of a 4x8, we didn't have a large enough space. So it was a 4x4, just an oval track, and he had his train layout, train room, and then we had a family room off to the side of that, and that's where my layout was. And it was kind of nice because it was sort of built in that I could borrow, his blue box cars with the KD covers and metal wheel sets, and kind of enjoying the hobby that way. And then a few years into that, just sort of branched into N scale for a little while, and then went back to HO scale and kind of during that whole time I've in the background has been doing plastic models in general. So,
And what did your dad? What is? I'm assuming your dad still has a layout, does he?
oh yeah, yeah, still in the same space. He models a sort of proto-fictional version of the Baltimore, Ohio, Chicago terminal. He calls it the Calumet terminal. Um, but he's a Baltimore, Ohio modeler. He works for the railroad. He's going to be retiring towards the end of June this year, so it's really exciting for him and us and all that stuff. So, but railroading's always been part of my life as a child, being the son of a railroader and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, like can we investigate that a little bit more before we move on to your life
yeah,
story,
yeah, of course, go ahead.
if you don't mind? Because
Mm-mm.
I'm fascinated. I feel like over the 10 years of the podcast, I am now meeting more and more people. Like, if you don't mind, if I ask, how old of a gentleman are you?
I'm 34.
Okay. I'm meeting more and more people like your age that, their dad were model railroaders,
Hmm.
which is very cool because you've been exposed to it your whole life. And I think it's more fun for me because I'm meeting more and more people whose dads were model railroaders or their family was into model railroading, and it gives you a running start. I mean, by the time you were already 13 or 14, you probably fully understood the difference between scale modeling and just pulling stuff out of a box and sticking it on a track.
Exactly, yeah. And I knew a lot about prototype modeling, and I knew a lot about the prototype in general. Um, he uh, he collects a lot of stuff, from maps and artifacts and stuff through his travels of working on the railroad for his 30 something years. So yeah, so I mean, even as an early preteen, I guess you would say, that 9 to 12-year-old age, yeah, I had a very strong grasp on model railroading, and um, at the time he was a member of the local model railroad club, and I would go down there and kind of hang out with the guys. It was kind of cool being that age and just hanging around with people that are now my age, that would have been my age at this time or older, and um, just
Maybe,
kind of get
yeah, yeah, maybe
thrown into that.
yeah. I interrupted you, which is you're going to get used
No,
to
you're fine.
anyway. But you made me think of a question because uh, when I was a kid, a teenager, from the age of, I don't know, probably 16 or 17, my buddy Mike, we were into car models and
Mhm.
into model railroading and car models. I was model railroading and car models, but he was strictly car models. But he pretty quickly understood what scale modeling was and taught me a lot about that. And I always felt like it gave me a head start as you got into your 20s because I fully understood the difference between, you know, building a scale model and making it look as good as I possibly could, and just, I don't know, it's just slapping it together, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it
Because
does, and it's go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, because I'm looking at the photos of this uh, it's the North American F-100C, which you posted in last November. And I mean, this is absolutely gorgeous, this thing.
Oh, thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah, like it's just gorgeous. It's like, there's a real satisfaction into building these things and making them look as good as you can. Like that. I'm looking at the seat here, like the cockpit, and like, holy mackerel! Like, how you've got this, you got it all very detailed in the cockpit. Is some of that decals or decals, or is it all free hand painted?
This day and age, it's a lot of aftermarket stuff. There's a good amount of companies that provide stuff for specific kits. So you have like your kit manufacturer. So think of it as like a Walther's Cornerstone, just to kind of bridge the gap there. And then you would have a aftermarket company that would make a detail photo etch dress up kit for that model. Um, and then nowadays, kind of the industry's changing where there is trying to think of how to describe it the best way. It's a decal, but it's almost like a resin 3D printed thing. So it's raised detail on it. Like you can run your finger across it and you can feel those little dials and switches, which is really cool this day and age. And you apply it just like a regular detail or a decal with hot water and microsol, microset. You sometimes have to put a little bit of CA behind it just to hold it in place, but it really speeds up the process. Um, And what's nice with that is when it comes down to the seat belts, when you're using photo etched metal, it's hard to get that natural lay down effect that fabric would have. But these decals, they're very flexible, so it's nice to kind of position them with a hobby knife or tweezers or something just to kind of get them to lay in there the way you want to.
So even the seat belts are this kind of decal material, you're saying?
Correct, yeah. And then there's sort of the classic. If there's not something like that available, I will make basic seat belts out of Tamiya masking tape.
Okay. Yeah, I guess what
So
I'm
you
looking at.
just
I guess what I'm looking at here is the cockpit for the F-104J.
yes, yeah, yeah. So that one had the sort of decal style photo etch stuff for it, which is trying to think of what the name of that, but I believe they're based out of Australia is the company that makes it. And then there's another company in Ukraine that makes stuff like that. Yeah. So the one that I'm looking at, I haven't used it yet, but it's a company out of Ukraine called Kelik, Kelik. Um,
Kelik. It's the best part of the
yeah. So
podcast. The best part of the podcast
yeah,
is when I'm typing. It's
the elevator music.
yeah, Kelik paint tool. It's called. I found it Kelik.com, and then
Yes,
and they have a paint tool. Oh, that was
I've not seen
something.
the paint tool.
Yeah, wow, that's what came up first. Let me see what else there was. Res kit models, Kelik res kit
That's
model.
yeah. They're associated with ResKit. That's another Ukrainian. I think they're both related to one another. That's another aftermarket company that does they do resin casting and they do 3D printed parts as well for the three major scales. I don't think they do any much in 1/44th, which is a little bit smaller than what I usually work in. So
Yeah, so I'm looking here at so they've got these interior 3D decals for the trumpeter kit, or that says the hobby bus kit, the A7E Corsair 2 interior 3D decals for the hobby boss kit, 1750, and it's a sheet of, like you say, it's wow. And you know what? This is see the Wednesday group is now gonna. I think the Wednesday chat group's gonna have to take a lot of responsibility for the podcast going forward, because I think this is turning into a 3-parter already. We've chewed up almost 20 minutes and we're still talking about decals, and I have got lots of other questions for you.
this is
Um,
this is uh this is Lionel falls down the rabbit hole of scale modeling.
well, exactly. That's kind of one of the. I've been kind of thinking for years I should talk to people in other hobbies, and then when I saw that you were a plane modeler as well, a plastic plane models. Let's say that.
Yeah,
Um,
there we
uh,
go.
when I saw you were doing that, I thought, well, that'll be interesting to talk about, because not only are you a model railroader, you're also probably taking a lot of your hobby skills from building planes into, like, would you say that having a variety of building, like you're building planes and you're building model railroading, like, do you find that there is a crossover, and that your abilities to do certain things is better because you have a wider range of what you're working on?
Exactly, yeah. I believe looking at HO scale, I look at it as 1/87th scale modeling, and my airplanes, I only build in 1/72nd scale. That's all I do. So it's very close in proximity of sizing. Um, there are times where I know for a fact that if I was to grab a HO scale locomotive, it would feel very different for the first couple sessions because it is a different size. But yeah, it does transfer out really nicely. And I think it goes back to the overarching of just whether it's detailing a locomotive, whether it's detailing a cockpit using decals or just regular classic photo etch or scratch building. It really just comes down to patience.
Yeah. And
That's the big thing of
yeah, that's the thing that you have to learn for scale model railroading is patience. And that's when my buddy and I were teenagers. Like he won like the big there used to be in Toronto. There was like every January there was the big car show, and in the big car show they had a big model car show. And I mean, by the time he was 18, he was winning the model car show. I mean, one year he won a dirt bike because he had the best model in show. And I mean,
How about that? I mean, you build a plastic model and you win a
I,
dirt bike.
yeah,
How neat is that?
and I'd never ridden a motorcycle, and we take it out to the parking lot, and I had a pickup truck, so we knew how we were going to get it home. But like we take it out in the parking lot, and he rides it a bit, and then I ride a bit, and I just grab a handful of throttle, and I'm running down the parking lot, two hands on the bike, and my feet are running as fast as they can, trying to figure out. But he won this thing from building, and it was pretty quickly that he learned how to build these fine scale models, these absolutely gorgeous
Mhm.
models with so much detail on the interior and the engine compartment. And I'm just looking at all this plane stuff, and I'm thinking, it almost seems like it's more detailed than model railroading. Would that be an accurate statement?
Um, it can be. I'll phrase it that way. It can be. I do have, I would say with full honesty that not every single aircraft that I've built is at that level. There are ones that I just like to kind of bridge in between those kind of kits where they're just right out of the box and I just use my basic, masking of paint skills or airbrushing skills or using just, Tamiya tape for seat belts or just painting the basic cockpit that's included in whatever kit I grab, just to sort of make it a little bit easier on myself because it does get expensive too when you start parting out all that aftermarket stuff. So I become a little bit selective at times where I'm like, yeah, that's a really nice aircraft and I want to do it justice and I want it to look like, as close to a museum model as I can within my ability. So I'll, spend the extra 50, $60 on extras just to, detail it out to the nines. And I guess the relatable thing would be, um, do you want the Tangent model or do you want the AccuRail model freight car? I think that would be the overarching kind of connection to that. Or do you want the just blue box locomotive that you had forever, or do you want to go and get a scale trains or Rapido or Athearn Genesis kind of level? So just kind of depends on how you're feeling. But yeah, I just like to, in between some of these projects, I'll just do something kind of basic and simple just to kind of clear your head.
That's kind of a cool idea too. Just do something simple. And so you said, didn't you say? Didn't I hear you say there a while ago you just completed your 80th airplane model?
Yes. Yeah, my 80th, going back to about 2010 is pretty much where I kind of started, kind of keeping track of stuff. So
And what do you do with
um,
them all?
I have two display cases in the basement of this house that are just right outside of this workshop that I'm in. And then I do have probably a dozen or so that are hanging inside the shop. Um, but yeah, I build them and then just display them, and that's where they are. I kind of treat them. I sort of since I've been a model railroader for my entire life, I also kind of look at these as just like your very well detailed structures that you would have on a train layout. So, you kind of rearrange them the way you want to and try to group them by subject matter sometimes or country. But yeah, they just sit in display cases in a nice curio cabinet style display case with pretty good LED lighting and stuff, and that's where they go when they're done. So
Now, when you're doing airplane, I wanted to talk about more about your dad too. And already we're at 25 minutes. What a mess this is.
this would be
Um,
a four-parter at this point.
yeah, it's the way we're going here. We got to try to jam it into two parts at least. Listen, you know what? Maybe we'll be able to practice. This will be like we'll do a Monday and a Tuesday show, one back to back, just to see what that's like. Because I'm interested to see what that's like. So would you say with airplane models you buy more? It's more worldwide. Like it's like these guys are in the Ukraine. These res kit guys or these whatever you call them. What did you collect? What was it? It started with a K.
Uh, yeah, it was Kellic, and then well, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but I think they're associated with Res Kit, which is
Right, right.
the Ukraine company that we said. But yeah, I mean, there's I guess I would say it's sort of a couple hotbed kind of areas. Like you have Japan and China of model makers. For seems like the past 5 years, Ukraine seems to be producing a lot of stuff. There's a handful of companies that are based in Ukraine and the Czech Republic and stuff like that. And then you have your classic Revell stuff that's produced in China, but they're established in the United States. And then you have Airfix, which is I think everything in Airfix's line is I may be wrong, but I believe majority of it is all made within the United Kingdom, whether it's molding or designing and production and stuff like that. And they're associated with Hornby now, probably the past 15 years or so, 10 years. Someone can write in and correct that. Um, but yeah, you got your Japanese companies like Hasegawa, Fine Molds, and then you have your Chinese companies like Trumpeter, Tamiya. Well, Tamiya would be Japan, and then you have like Revell of Germany, regular U.S. Revell. Edward is a really big manufacturer for aftermarket stuff, and they do make their own kits, and they're based in the Czech Republic. Uh, and then, and then there's Zvezda, which is in Russia. So yeah, it's a very international hobby because you get international subjects out of it. Like a lot of the Zvezda stuff out of Russia is going to be a lot of Russian subject matter because that's what they do.
And
Um,
I'm assuming that they can't send anything out. Like they can't send out the Russia's newest fighter jet because they're probably a lot more restricted than other companies about what they can and can't do. I guess. Like, I mean,
yeah,
do you actually interact with some of these Russian companies?
I have bought some Zvezda kits in the past. I got one on my shelf over there, but it's not super hard to get a hold of. Um, a lot of it's some things like that you do have to go to eBay and buy it. So you kind of pay for it and then wait for it. Basically, you wait maybe a week, well, more than a week, maybe a month sometimes. So, but it's all part of the process. But yeah, I mean, like your Hasegawa kits are imported into the U.S. Trumpeters imported into the U.S. So it's not super hard to get a hold of. If it's a really well stocked hobby shop, usually they have some kind of dealer network that they could get that stuff for you, or it will be on their shelves that you can kind of rummage through. So
So now let me see if I can pin you down on this one because I'm looking at
mhm.
ResKit and they've got this really cool 132nd. So that's be like 132nd would be like bigger than O scale, wouldn't it? Because O scale is
Yes,
148. So this is be like
yeah,
something bigger
almost
than,
garden gauge.
yeah. So like they have this ResKit has this one busy day and it's a carrier crew on deck, and it's like six different 3D figurines printed in 132nd scale, which would probably be fun just to build, just to paint those guys.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for sure.
um, so have you noticed you might in your you said 34, so let's say the last 20 years since you were 14, since the turn of the
Mhm.
century, have you noticed that, wow, like now all of a sudden in 132nd scale, you get this really cool carrier crew guys that weren't available even say 10 years ago? Like, have you noticed an explosion because of 3D printing?
There has been. I've seen it. It's been it's been a nice addition to not so much the model kits themselves, but the accessories. So like if you're looking for like the other day I was looking for the sort of ordnance that a Iraq airplane would have carried during Desert Storm. And maybe 20 years ago, you would be able to obviously find it in a book of like, hey, this is the missile that they carry, this is the type of bomb or fuel tank. And that would be it. You would have to maybe scratch build it or find something that was really close to it, maybe made from like Hasegawa or something that you just had in your spares box from a different kit that it didn't look exactly like it, but it was close enough, like a good stand-in. But I mean, nowadays, with Edward and ResKit and just independent people just 3D printing things, you can pretty much find it um, with a lot of success. Yeah, and then you pay you know $20 or $15, and it sends to your house, and you're
Okay.
golden.
All
You just
right.
got to
Well,
assemble it, paint it, and
let me ask you another question then, because and I still got to get back to your dad, and we're already 31 minutes in. What a mess. Um, I'm like the last guy on the planet that should have a podcast. Um, for various reasons. Uh, so I see that okay. So I'm stuck on this carrier crew thing because I'm thinking, man, I might just buy that just to paint those guys up. So but they seem to be quite happy to have 1/32nd scale, 1/35th scale, 1/48th scale, 1/72nd scale. So is plane modeling, is it fairly, like, is it across the board in different size scales? Like it's
correct. Yeah. So the
like how come there's like a 1/32nd and a 1/35th scale? Do you
so
know?
your one yeah, so your 1/35th scale is primarily just for your armor. So like think of like tanks and your military jeeps, or just like figures. That was sort of, I don't know how far back that goes. Obviously as far back as I can remember, but that was sort of the decided size for military tanks and support stuff for that. And then you had 1/32nd scale airplanes. Um, and then from there you had your 48th scale. And then actually 72nd scale was the first agreed upon scale for model airplanes going back through the history. It was just there may be a little bit more detail you can find online, but that is the sort of nucleus of scale model airplanes came from 72nd scale. And there was always a running joke from what I've heard back in the 60s and 70s that if you can't find it in 72nd scale, then nobody makes it because it
Right,
was such a popular size.
right. And
So it's sort
70,
of the HO scale of plastic model airplanes.
yeah. And so I kind of want, yeah, okay. So 72nd scale is kind of the HO scale of plastic model planes. And um, it also 172nd scale. Like I'm thinking our buddy Scott Lister, who is a S scaler. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm looking at jerry cans, for fuel in 1/72nd scale. Well, S scale is 1/64. So I mean, you could buy these jerry cans and stick them on the layout somewhere, and nobody would know the difference between whether they were 1/72nd or 1/64th.
Exactly. Yeah, you can use it as a stand-in, which is really nice.
Yeah, like there's so much
Pretty.
more stuff available that for the modeler worldwide, that you could start to mix different hobbies together almost because of
Mhm.
this 3D printing.
Yeah. And it also crosses over from the model train world. Um, I've used in the past on landing gear for 72nd scale airplanes. There's usually some sort of black plaque that'll have information about whether it's maybe the type of tire or it's the hydraulic diagram or something. And I'll use the consolidated lube plates from HO scale and just kind of cut them down, um, and just decal them onto the side of a piece of landing gear just to kind of give it the look of it having some sort of informational plaque on it. So,
Right. And all this whole discussion for the last 20 minutes has all been because on December 1st you posted a picture of the cockpit for the F-104J, and I'm learning all this stuff about that res kit. Like, man, I'm like, oh, I'm going to buy some of
yeah,
those jerry cans or those 1/72nd guys just to paint, and because it's like what
yeah.
you say, a lot of times you just want a simple project that you don't need to super detail.
hmm
Um,
And then like those jerry cans would be nice for like a World War II diorama, a small kind of diorama. You put like a P-51 Mustang parked in the grass, and you have some jerry cans around it, and you got yourself a mini little scene use some static grass and stuff, and it works out pretty good.
This is all right. So let's get back to your dad before we get too far off course.
Okay,
We're already way off course, but that's neither here nor there. So your dad works for the railroad.
correct. Yeah, he works for the Indiana Harbor Belt Railroad in Northwest Indiana.
Oh, really? And
Yes. Yep.
is that the only railroad he's ever worked for, or
No, he was before that, he was with Amtrak during the late 80s. So like 80, I think 87 to 95, 96 is he was with Amtrak. And then from 96 to now he's been with the IHB.
so almost 30 years he's been with IHB?
Yes. Yep.
And what does he do there? If you don't mind me
He is
asking.
no, it's fine. No, it's perfectly fine. He's a freight conductor.
Okay, so he works on the trains and he's a conductor.
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
he works out of one of the local yards in East Chicago, Indiana, and he's enough seniority that he works a day shift, and
Right.
they shuffle cars that come in, and they build up trains for outbounds, or they build trains for the afternoon shifts to come in and go and service the industries in the area.
And it's wow, that's pretty cool. So it features 54 miles of mainline track, 24 miles of which is double track, and 266 miles of yard and siding track. And they offer a diverse range of services, including industrial switching for 160 customers, resulting in 170,000 carloads annually. We interchange daily with 16 other rail carriers in Chicago. Wow.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
operate a growing fleet of approximately 1,400 cars. Well, you know what? Get your dad on the phone and we'll stop talking to you and start talking to him. um,
Get off the ice, kid. We need to talk to the professional.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're only getting 4 minutes of ice time tonight. Um, okay, I'm going to tell a story now. So my son and I, we go to probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 Leaf games a year. And
Hmm.
because my friend has seasons tickets that has been in his family since 1960, and I take a quarter of them, and we go to a lot of Leaf games. And we usually park underneath the arena, and we usually get there, just around game time. But almost always, not always, one out of every 3 times, there's some guy from the team that's not playing that night that's walking through the same parking lot as we are because to get to wherever it is the players go, and they're going past the elevators, or they're on the elevators going up to the top to watch the game or something like that. And about 4 weeks ago, we were on the on the elevator with 3 guys that were not, younger guys that weren't playing, but they're on the team and they weren't playing that night. And the one guy he's Russian, and he very famous for saying, forecheck, back check, paycheck. And my son goes, hey, there's such and such. I can't pronounce his name. And I went, oh yeah, forecheck, back check, paycheck. And he goes, well, tonight only paycheck, which I was quite thrilled with, but I'm easily entertained. So, your dad has been. What size layout does your dad have?
Oh, let's see. It is roughly, I would say it's maybe close to 10 by 20 foot
Okay,
is
okay,
the room.
yeah.
Um, and through the years of me growing up, the layout has changed at least a half a dozen times. So it was sort of, build this, and then before I know it, during the summer while I'm growing up, everything's coming down and he's changing the track plan or the bench work, or it's kind of ever evolving. But finally, I would say probably the past 10, 15 years, it's stayed pretty consistent finally. Um, and it's it's a nice layout. He is a DC modeler. He does not do DCC, which is unique in this time of technology. But it's a very very well put together layout.
Um, but I've talked to Jim Scores, the guy that owns NCE, and he
Mhm.
insists that probably still 50% of model railroaders are still DC powered. So while DCC is the thing of the future and is the thing of the modern model railroader, he says there's lots and lots and lots of guys that are still on DC power. Our buddy Todd Treacer is one of those guys. He's still on DC power.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that was a surprising thing when I realized that. I go, wow, that's really awesome.
Well, and Todd has so many locomotives, and no way he could ever change them all to DCC.
Right, and that's the way my dad's been. I mean, he has, early blue box, he has early Atlas yellow box, and he's got, more modern ready to roll stuff, but the vast majority of it is all hardwired decoders, and that just takes time and patience and um a lot of frustration and cost. And
Yeah,
if
frustration.
if it's not broke, then don't fix it. If you enjoy the hobby that way, then why not just enjoy it? So
So, I was had a really good question. Don't tell me. What was it? It was about your dad. Oh yeah. So did you notice, or did you ever have any kind of, I don't know how you would even know this, but it's been for years. It's been like, if you're a full time railroader, you don't talk about model railroading because you're not supposed to be a model railroader if you're a full time railroader, which I'm beginning to realize is about as far from the truth as you can get because I'm constantly meeting people that are full time railroaders and model railroaders. So did you ever get any sense that your dad didn't really discuss it with the guys at work, or was it always pretty much he didn't care who knew? Or would you?
it was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot of from what I can tell and from the stories I've heard, it was a lot of you don't really talk about it. Um, it was, there was a core group of employee, coworkers that, did HO scale, but it wasn't something that they would actively talk about. But yeah, I mean, but growing up, I can remember him taking, Trains magazine or Model Railroader or something with him for something to flip through during lunch, or if he had a little bit of downtime and it was in a safe environment where he could, take his mind off of work while he was at work, and but active that way. So
And what's your dad's first name?
Herman.
Hey, and is that what we call him, Herman? Is it
Yeah, call him Herman.
Hey, Herman, how you doing, buddy? He's probably listening to this. He's probably
He
go.
will be, yeah.
Yeah, he probably got a lot he wants to add to the whole discussion.
Well, I'm sure he would love to jump in.
Well, we could work on that one day.
We could, yeah.
There's no reason why we couldn't do that. That'd be a fun thing to do. Actually, that'd be a fun thing to do. Talk to a father and son because I'm assuming he probably has some sort of computer at home, so we can get him online and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd
Of
be
course.
cool. That would be cool. Actually, let's write that down and make a point of doing that because I think that would be a very cool thing to do. All right, we're at 45 minutes.
Wow.
See, that's the problem that people don't realize is the people at the other end, the people that I'm interviewing are always like, oh, the time, you do an hour and 40 minutes and they go, the time flew by.
Yeah.
And see, so then it's kind of like, well, but so now it's like, see, we've done 45 minutes and you can't even imagine that. And the time has flown by.
Yeah. And network time is very expensive these days. So.
Network time is very costly. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And we already covered a lot of really cool. Man, I can see me buying some of these res kit figures in 1/32 scale just to paint and like you say, you could even, man, oh man, it's so much cool. That's what
we haven't even. Nope. We haven't even touched upon me having the HO scale layout.
No, we haven't. That's because you have. Well, let's mention these things on the free channel.
Sure.
Before we go over to the rest of this interview, if you want to listen to some more with David Lund, which I'm sure you're going to want to after this because I want to, it's going to be over on the Patreon channel. On the very next day, it's going to be on the Patreon channel. It's a two-parter in the same week. So G4, this is the way we're doing it. We're doing like 50 minutes today, and then we're doing another 50 minutes or an hour tomorrow. So that's it. That's the way we're doing this one. So you also have a blog called the Rolling Workbench Modeler. And if you go to rollingworkbenchmodeler.blogspot.com, you can see that. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. And then your other Facebook page is, hang on, don't tell me. Let me guess. Because you have two You like have Lake Avenue Model Works, which I highly recommend everybody go there because there's a lot of very, very cool stuff over there. And then you have, don't tell me, I'm scrolling. No, I've got Lake Avenue twice. Don't you have another Facebook page?
Yeah, there's the Omaha and St. Louis Railway, Kansas City Layout is the group name.
All right, hang on. Let me find that because I got the. Okay, I got it again. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. Try again. I'm clicking buttons. This is the fun part of the podcast. I'm clicking buttons. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. I have no idea. I keep coming to Lake Avenue Model Works. Hang on. I'm going to get this right if it kills me. Let me try this one. No, I keep getting Lake Avenue Model Works on the links, on the two different separate links you sent me. Or did you only send me 2 links, maybe? Maybe that's it.
I sent you 3 links.
Yeah, I'm screwing it up. So, okay, just tell me what why does that one?
Yeah, so if you go to the search in Facebook, the name of the group is Omaha and St. Louis Railway, RWY, not railway spelt out, Kansas City Layout.
St. Louis. What did you say? RWY? Oh, okay.
RWY, yeah.
I'm going to just stop at RWY and see if that should be enough information for it to come up.
It should have a logo.
No.
Black and white logo.
Yeah, didn't get it. Omaha. Oh, I didn't put Omaha, but I didn't spell Omaha correctly. Boring. Let me see what I got this time. There it is. I got it. Boom. Groups. The Omaha St. Louis Railway Kansas City Layout. Is that it?
Yes, that's it.
Got it. So there's the 3 groups you want to go to. Lake Avenue Model Works or the Omaha and St. Louis Railway RWY Kansas City Layout. Those are your 3 groups, which is what we're going to talk about in the on the Patreon channel, because all we talked about basically so far was and was your dad, which is great. Your dad, Herman, the res kit and Kellic from Ukraine, and stuff that you can get from all over the world in plane modeling. And that was pretty much it, wasn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. We're going to
and the correlation between model railroading and plastic model airplane building.
Exactly. And that's 50 minutes. Okay, we're going to stop now because otherwise I'm going to start asking you questions about other pictures I'm looking at, and then we'll have to go down that rabbit hole. So I'm going to give out the email address because this is on the free channel. And if you'd like to email us and pro or con, tell us what you like and dislike about the podcast, you can email us at modelerslife@gmail.com. That's modelers with 1 L, like Lund, not 2 L's as in no. Where do you live? Do you live anywhere near Valley? Word Valley. That's not 2 L's.
Why not Lund? Why not Lund and Lionel?
Yeah, we could go with Lionel, but that seems so old. It seems much more. That's why you always got to have a third guy with you doing the interviews, because then you can put the pressure on them, and then I can just back at it and say, "Oh, you got it wrong."
Well, see, I came prepared, so.
Yeah, well, exactly. You did come prepared. I like that. And man, wait till you hear how good you sound on this. I love this new software, and I got you a good headset and all that stuff, so it's going to be good. It looks like a bomb went off in your train room.
That's when I was tearing down everything, yeah.
Oh, okay. We got to talk about that then. See, I just looked at the one picture, and it was like, oh, that's when I was tearing everything down. That was back in February 27th, 2021. All right, that's it. So we've done the email address. And if you like this podcast, today's free. If you like this podcast and you like to get twice as much podcasting every week, you can go to our Patreon channel on our website. Our website is amodelerslife.com. And if you go down there and scroll down just a little bit, you can click on our Patreon link, and you get twice as much podcasting every week for $5 a month. You get twice as much podcasting. Although I got a feeling that might go up a little tiny bit sometime in the next year or so, but only a little tiny bit. But I think that's it. I think we got it covered. And we do have T-shirts, but we're building a new and improved T-shirt shop. So stand by for that. And I think that's it. I think we got her covered. Uh, anything you'd like to add, David?
Just appreciate being on here as a person who's been listening for 8+ years. It's nice to
Holy
finally be
mackerel!
on here.
How'd you
Oh yeah.
how'd you find the podcast originally?
I was looking for something to listen to while I was working on my train layout early on, and I was listening to different podcasts that were unrelated to model railroading, and I thought there's got to be some kind of model railroad related or modeling in general, and came across this, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Um, you haven't posted on your Omaha and St. Louis Railway Kansas City layout for a while.
That's because the layout is disassembled still.
Okay, well
It's not active anymore.
we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Okay.
Are you ready? Actually, you
Yes.
know what? This is a episode because this is the first time you've ever been on. So this is going to be an episode. This is like episode 254 or 255 or something like that, some number in there. So I was going to say one thing, but it's something else. So at the end of this particular podcast, we need you to say happy rails to you. Now, the key to this is there's no singing, there's no dancing, there's no interpretation of any kind. All we need you to do is with enthusiasm say happy rails to you. Do you think you can handle that?
I think I can handle that. That's within my wheelhouse.
All right. Well, David, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
happy rails to you.
A Modeler's Life is sponsored by Big Ass Maine Potatoes. If you've got a Maine potato, you've got a big ass.
It's another Lincoln Homer.
oh, no, see, I wanted you to do it with enthusiasm.
Wasn't enthusiastic enough.
That was very enthusiastic. I'm just being a smart ass, which is something
Of course.
comes naturally.